General Kethvar stood on the bridge of his warship, looking down at the small human fleet below. His yellow eyes watched the tiny ships move around Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The human ships looked old and weak compared to his mighty Zephyrian fleet. This should be easy, he thought. For 300 years, the Zephyrian Empire had grown bigger and stronger. They had taken over 17 star systems. Each time, the other species had given up quickly when they saw the power of Zephyrian ships. Kethvar expected the humans to do the same thing. The general was tall, almost 8 feet, with dark green skin and sharp teeth. Scars covered his arms and face from many battles. Each scar told a story of victory. His soldiers respected him because he had never lost a fight. Today would be no different. "Sir, the human commander is trying to talk to us," said his aide, a younger Zephyrian named Velthar. Kethvar made a sound that meant no. "We do not talk. We take what we want. Tell our ships to attack." The battle started as Kethvar expected. His large ships fired their powerful weapons at the human vessels. The human ships were fast, but they were also small and weak. Several exploded right away. Kethvar smiled. This would be over soon. But then something strange happened. One of the human ships, badly damaged and leaking air, turned around and flew straight at his biggest warship. The human captain, a man named Jake Morrison, spoke over the radio to his crew. "This is Captain Morrison. My ship is dying, but we can still help our friends. Everyone get to the escape pods now." "That's an order." Kethvar watched with growing surprise. Instead of running away or asking for mercy, this human was going to crash his ship into the Zephyrian dreadnought. The general had seen many battles, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, should we destroy that ship before it reaches us?" asked Velthar. "No," Kethvar said quietly. "I want to see what he does." Captain Morrison's ship hit the dreadnought's engine section and exploded in a ball of fire. The big Zephyrian ship lost power and started to drift. The explosion created a hole in their formation that the other human ships quickly used to attack. Kethvar felt confused. Why would Morrison throw away his life like that? In Zephyrian culture, a good warrior lived to fight another day. Dying for nothing was the act of a fool, but the humans were not done surprising him. A small fighter ship, piloted by Lieutenant Lisa Carter, had lost one wing and was spinning out of control. Her radio crackled to life. "Command, this is Carter. My ship is finished, but I can still make a difference. I'm going after that carrier." "Negative, Carter," came the reply from another human officer. "Get to your escape pod. We'll pick you up." "Sorry, sir, but I've got a better idea." Lisa Carter flew her broken fighter straight at a Zephyrian carrier ship. The carrier had strong shields that protected it from normal attacks, but Carter aimed for the shield generators on the outside of the ship. Her fighter hit them and exploded, taking out the carrier's protection. Without shields, the Zephyrian carrier was easy prey for the human battleships. It, too, exploded in bright flames. Kethvar gripped the rail of his command deck. His hands shook slightly. 2 humans had just destroyed 2 of his best ships by killing themselves. He had never seen anything like it. The battle continued, but now Kethvar watched it differently. He saw human ships protecting each other. When one ship was in trouble, others would risk their own safety to help. When human fighters ran out of weapons, they used their ships as weapons. A human destroyer captain named Pete Williams spoke to his crew over the radio as enemy fire hit his ship. "We're taking heavy damage, but the evacuation ships behind us are almost safe. Hold the line, people. Every second we buy saves more lives." Williams's ship exploded, but the civilian ships he was protecting escaped to safety. Kethvar had studied many alien species before conquering them. Most acted like the Zephyrians when facing certain death. They tried to save themselves or they surrendered. But these humans kept fighting even when they knew they would die. The strangest part was that they seemed to die for humans they had never met. Carter had sacrificed herself for ships she was not even assigned to protect. Morrison had given his life to help the entire fleet. Williams had died for civilian ships full of strangers. As the battle ended, Kethvar counted his losses. 3 major warships destroyed, 7 smaller vessels badly damaged, over 2,000 Zephyrian warriors dead. The human fleet was almost gone too, but they had completed their mission. The evacuation ships had escaped with thousands of human families. "Sir," Velthar said carefully, "the humans fought well." Kethvar nodded slowly. "They fought like no species I have ever seen." "Should we prepare for the next attack?" his aide asked. The general did not answer right away. He was thinking about Captain Morrison's last words to his crew. The human had told them to escape while he died. A Zephyrian commander would have ordered his crew to die with him for honor. "Sir?" Velthar said again. "Tell me," Kethavar said. "Why do you think Morrison saved his crew?" Velthar looked confused. "I do not understand, sir. He could have ordered them to stay and die with honor. Instead, he sent them away while he died alone. Why? Perhaps he was weak?" Velthar suggested. Kethavar shook his head. "No. A weak commander would have run away himself. Morrison stayed and died while sending others to safety. That is not weakness." The general walked to his private quarters, leaving his confused aide behind. He sat at his desk and began to write his report, but the words would not come. How could he explain what he had seen to the high command? The Zephyrian way was simple. The strong took from the weak. Winners lived, losers died. Honor came from personal victory in battle. But the humans had shown him something different. They found honor in death, but only when that death saved others. Morrison had died to save his crew and help his fleet. Carter had died to protect ships. She did not even know. Williams had died for strangers. Each death had helped other humans live. Kethavar tried to imagine a Zephyrian doing the same thing. He could not. His people were taught that survival was the highest goal. Dying for others, especially strangers, was considered madness. But as he watched the recordings of the battle again, these humans did not look mad. They looked determined. They looked brave. They looked like they were fighting for something more important than their own lives. The general put down his writing pad and stared out at the stars.
In a few days, the High Command would order a full invasion of Earth. They would send 1,000 ships and 1,000,000 warriors. They expected him to lead the attack. But something had changed inside Kethvar during this battle. For the first time,
in his long military career, he was not sure that winning was the right thing to do. He thought about Morrison's family, whoever they were, and how they would never see him again. He thought about Carter's friends and Williams' crew. These humans had people who cared about them, people who would miss them. The Zephyrian general had won many battles and conquered many worlds, but he had never thought about the families left behind. Tonight, for the first time, he did. 3 days had passed since the battle at Europa, but General Kethvar could not stop thinking about what he had seen. He sat in his command room, staring at the report he needed to send to the Zephyrian High Council. The words on the screen looked wrong no matter how many times he rewrote them. "Sir, the High Council is waiting for your battle report," Velthar reminded him for the 3rd time that morning. Kethvar rubbed his forehead with one clawed hand. "I know. Tell them it will be ready soon." But how could he explain what the humans had done? How could he make the High Council understand that these small, weak creatures had fought like nothing he had ever seen before? He tried writing the truth. "The humans showed unusual battle tactics, sacrificing individual ships to damage our larger vessels." But that sounded too simple. It did not explain the feeling he had when he watched Captain Morrison crash his dying ship into the dreadnought. He tried a different approach. Human forces demonstrated unexpected resistance to overwhelming odds. That was also true, but it missed something important. The humans had not just resisted. They had chosen to die for each other. Finally, Kethvar wrote a basic military report. Enemy forces destroyed 3 major vessels and damaged 7 others before retreating. Our losses were higher than expected due to human suicide attacks. Recommend larger fleet for full invasion. He sent the report and immediately felt sick. The words were true, but they told only part of the story. They did not mention Morrison's crew escaping in their pods while their captain died alone. They did not mention Carter's broken voice as she flew her damaged fighter into the carrier. They did not mention Williams telling his crew that every second they fought would save more lives. 2 hours later, his communication system buzzed with an incoming message from the High Council. Admiral Zethron, the head of the military, appeared. On his screen, the old warrior's face was covered in ritual scars that showed his many victories. General Kethavar, your report is concerning. How did such a small human fleet cause so much damage? Kethavar chose his words carefully. They used their ships as weapons, sir. When their vessels were damaged, they crashed them into our ships instead of retreating. Suicide attacks, Zethron said with disgust. The sign of a weak species that cannot fight properly. This makes them more dangerous than we thought, but also easier to defeat. Sir, if they are willing to throw their lives away so easily, they will not last long in a real war. We will send 1,000 ships to Earth. You will lead the invasion force. With overwhelming numbers, their suicide tactics will not save them. Kethavar felt a cold feeling in his stomach. 1,000 ships, sir? Yes. We will crush them completely. No more surprises, no more losses. Prepare your fleet. You leave. In 1 week. The communication ended, leaving Kethavar alone with his thoughts. 1,000 ships would destroy Earth easily. The humans had fought bravely, but they could not win against such numbers. Their courage would not be enough. But was it really courage, or was it madness? Kethavar decided to study the battle recordings more carefully. He had the computer play back every communication the humans had made during the fight. What he learned changed everything. Captain Morrison had not been alone on his ship. The recordings showed he had a family. Before the battle, he had sent a message to someone named Claire Morrison on Mars Colony. In the message, he talked about coming home to see her and their twin daughters after his mission was over. Tell the girls Daddy will be back soon, Morrison had said in the recording. And tell them to keep practicing their math. I want to see their homework when I get home. Morrison had known he might die in battle, but he had planned to live. When his ship was destroyed, he could have escaped with his crew. Instead, he had chosen to die so they could live and complete their mission. Kethavar found more personal messages in the captured data. Lisa Carter had been engaged to marry a man named Ben Parker. The wedding was planned for 3 weeks after her mission ended. In her last message to Ben, she had talked about the dress she wanted to wear and the flowers they should have at the ceremony. I can't wait to dance with you, she had told him. Save me the first song. Carter had dreams, plans, a future with someone she loved. She had thrown it all away to destroy one enemy ship, but she had not done it for glory or honor. She had done it to protect the other human ships. Commander Williams had a crew of 200 people under his command. Before the battle, Kethavar found a recording of Williams talking to his officers about their families back on Earth. Remember, Williams had said, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone back home who can't fight. We're fighting for children who don't even know this war exists. That's what makes us strong. When Williams had died, he had been protecting evacuation ships full of those same children and families. He had known exactly what he was dying for. The more Kethavar studied the human communications, the more confused he became. These humans had not wanted to die. They had people they loved, plans for the future, reasons to live. But when the choice came between their own lives and the lives of others, they chose to sacrifice themselves. In Zephyrian culture, warriors died for honor and glory. They died to prove they were strong. They died to show they were not afraid. But these humans had died for different reasons. They died to save strangers. They died to protect people they would never meet. They died because they believed other lives were worth more than their own. Kethavar tried to imagine himself making the same choice. If his ship was dying and he could save his crew by crashing it into an enemy vessel, would he do it? He thought about it for a long time and realized he did not know the answer. The next day brought another surprise. The humans had sent a message to the Zephyrian fleet. It was not a threat or a demand for surrender. It was something Kethvar had never seen before. Commander Pete Williams had recorded the message before his death. In it, he spoke directly to the Zephyrian forces. "To the warriors we fought today," Williams said, "you showed courage and skill in battle. We honor those of you who died with the same respect we show our own fallen. War is terrible. But warriors on both sides deserve recognition for their bravery. We hope that someday our peoples can find peace instead of conflict." Kethvar played the message 3 times. Williams had praised the enemy soldiers who had tried to kill him. He had honored Zephyrian warriors who had died trying to destroy human ships. This was completely alien to everything Kethvar knew about war. When Zephyrians won battles, they celebrated their victory and mocked their defeated enemies. When they lost battles, they felt shame and anger. But this human commander had found something good to say about warriors who were trying to kill him and his crew. That night, Kethvar could not sleep. He walked through his ship looking at his own crew. They were good soldiers, trained from birth to fight and conquer. They followed orders without question. They would die for the Empire if commanded to do so. But would they die for strangers? Would they sacrifice themselves to save people they had never met? Would they honor fallen enemies who had fought against them? Kethvar thought about his own life. He had fought in dozens of battles and conquered many worlds. He had medals and honors and the respect of his people. But what had he really accomplished? He had made the Zephyrian Empire bigger and stronger, but he had also caused pain and death to millions of innocent people. The humans at Europa had died to protect innocent people. They had given up their futures so that strangers could have futures. They had found honor not in victory but in sacrifice. As dawn broke over his ship, General Kethvar made a decision that would change his life forever. He sat down at his communication terminal and began typing a message to the High Council. "I respectfully resign my commission in the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet, effective immediately. I cannot in good conscience lead an invasion against a species that has shown me the true meaning of honor." He stared at the message for a long time before sending it. Once he pressed the button, there would be no going back. He would be branded a traitor and an outcast. His own people would hunt him down. But he thought about Morrison's daughters who would never see their father again. He thought about Carter's fiancée, waiting for a wedding that would never happen. He thought about Williams's crew who had lost their captain while protecting strangers. Kethvar pressed the send button. Within minutes, his communication system exploded with angry messages from the High Council. Admiral Zethron's face appeared on his screen, twisted with rage. "You coward! You disgrace! How dare you abandon your duty?" "I have not abandoned my duty," Kethvar replied calmly. "I have found it." He cut the communication and began preparing for the journey ahead. He was going to Earth, not as a conqueror but as someone seeking to understand what made humans willing to die for each other. General Kethvar stood in the small cargo bay of a stolen scout ship, watching the stars change as he traveled toward Earth. 2 weeks had passed since he sent his resignation to the High Council. 2 weeks since he had given up everything he had ever known. The scout ship was barely big enough for one person. It had no weapons and weak shields. If the Zephyrian fleet found him, they would destroy him without a second thought. But Kethvar was not worried about his own people anymore. He was worried about what would happen when he reached Earth. The humans had every reason to kill him on sight. He had led the attack that destroyed their ships and killed their people. Morrison, Carter, and Williams were dead because of orders he had given. Why would the humans listen to anything he had to say? But he had to try. The invasion fleet was coming whether he helped or not. Maybe somehow he could prevent the war that would destroy both their peoples. Velthar had tried to stop him from leaving. His aide had begged him to reconsider, to ask the High Council for forgiveness. But Kethvar knew there was no going back. The moment he questioned the invasion, he had become a traitor in Zephyrian eyes. "Sir, please think about what you are doing," Velthar had said as Kethvar prepared the scout ship. "The humans will kill you, and even if they don't, you will never be able to come home." "Home to what?" Kethvar had replied. "A life spent destroying other people's homes." Now alone in space, he wondered if Velthar had been right. Maybe the humans would kill him before he could explain why he had come. Maybe he was flying toward his own death for no reason. But every time he had such thoughts, he remembered Williams's message praising Zephyrian warriors. If a human could find something good to say about his enemies, maybe there was hope for understanding. The ship's computer beeped, telling him he was entering the outer edges of Earth's solar system. Soon, human patrol ships would find him. He needed to be ready. Kethvar activated the communication system and began recording a message on all frequencies that human ships might use. "This is General Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," he said slowly, trying to make his voice sound as peaceful as possible. "I am alone and unarmed. I come seeking understanding, not conquest. I wish to speak with your leaders about preventing a war between our peoples." He set the message to repeat automatically and waited. Within an hour, his sensors detected 3 human ships approaching fast. They were small but heavily armed patrol vessels, the kind designed to stop exactly what he was doing. "Unknown alien vessel," came a voice over the radio. "You are in restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Kethvar activated his communication system. "This is General Kethvar. I am the Zephyrian commander who led the attack at Europa. I have resigned my position and wish to speak with Earth's leaders about peace." There was a long silence. Kethvar could imagine the human patrol crews trying to decide if this was a trick. Finally, the voice came back. "General, you are responsible for the deaths of 300 human personnel. Why should we not destroy you right now?" The question was fair. Kethvar had expected it. "Because I have information about the invasion fleet coming to destroy your world, and because I have learned something from your people that I need to understand better." "What have you learned?" Kethvar thought about Morrison crashing his ship to save his crew. He thought about Carter sacrificing her wedding to protect strangers. He thought about Williams dying for children he had never met. "I have learned that some things are worth dying for," he said, "but I do not yet understand what those things are." Again, silence. Then a different voice came over the radio, older and calmer. "General Kethvar, this is Admiral Kate Stevens of Earth Defense Command. You will surrender your ship and submit to boarding. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction." "I understand, Admiral. I submit to your authority." The UI. Human ship surrounded his scout vessel and guided it toward a space station orbiting Earth's moon. Kethvar had never seen Luna Station before, but he had heard about it in military briefings. It was supposed to be a heavily defended fortress protecting Earth's approach. What surprised him was how beautiful it looked. The station was not just a military base. It had gardens visible through transparent sections, places where families could live and children could play. The Zephyrians built their stations for war only. Humans seemed to build theirs for life. As his ship was pulled into the station's docking bay, Kethvar saw human soldiers waiting for him. They wore full battle armor and carried weapons that could kill him instantly. But they were not pointing those weapons at his ship. They were being careful, but not threatening. The airlock opened, and Kethvar stepped out slowly, keeping his hands visible. The human soldiers were much smaller than him, but he could see they were not afraid. Their leader, a woman with gray hair and steel eyes, stepped forward. "General Kethvar, I am Admiral Stevens. You are now our prisoner." "I understand, Admiral. I place myself under your protection." Stevens looked surprised by his words. "Protection? You attacked our people. Why would you expect protection from us?" "Because your Commander Williams honored fallen Zephyrian warriors even as he was dying, to stop them. If a human can show respect for his enemies, perhaps humans can show mercy to someone seeking peace." The Admiral studied his face for a long moment. "You recorded those communications?" "Yes. I have studied every message your people sent during the battle. I am trying to understand why they fought the way they did." Stevens nodded to her soldiers and they lowered their weapons slightly. "Come with me, General. There are people who want to talk with you." As they walked through the station, Kethvar saw things that amazed him. Human families lived here. Children played in the corridors, and civilians worked alongside military personnel. On Zephyrian stations, only warriors were allowed, Family was considered a weakness that made soldiers soft. But these humans did not look soft. They looked strong in a different way. They were fighting not just for conquest or glory, but for the right to have families and children and peaceful lives. Admiral Stevens led him to a secure conference room where several humans were waiting. She introduced them as Earth's Defense Council, the people who made decisions about protecting their world. "General," Stevens said as they sat down, "you claim you want to prevent a war, but our intelligence suggests a massive Zephyrian fleet is already being assembled. What makes you think you can stop it?" Kethavar leaned forward. "I cannot stop the invasion, Admiral, but I can tell you how to survive it, and perhaps if you understand why I am here, you can help me convince my people that this war is wrong." A man named Dr. Alan Cooper, who had been introduced as a specialist in alien behavior, spoke up. "Why did you resign your commission, General?" "In our studies of Zephyrian culture, military honor is everything. You threw away your entire life." I threw away a life built on destroying other lives," Kethavar replied. "At Europa, I watched humans die not for honor or glory, but to protect people they loved. I realized I had spent my entire career taking such people away from families who loved them." Dr. Cooper made notes on a tablet. "But surely you knew that war caused death and suffering. Why did Europa change your mind?" Kethavar was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain it. "In Zephyrian culture, we are taught that the strong deserve to rule the weak. We believe that conquest brings order to the universe, but your people showed me something different." "What was that?" Admiral Stevens asked. "They showed me that strength is not about taking from others. True strength is about giving to others even when it costs you everything." The humans in the room exchanged glances. Kethavar could see they were not sure whether to trust him, but they were listening. "Tell us about the invasion fleet," Stevens said. "What are we facing?" 1,000 ships, Kethavar said quietly. 10 million warriors. They will attack Earth, Mars, and all your colonies at the same time. The High Council believes that overwhelming force will prevent the kind of resistance you showed at Europa. The room fell silent. Even Kethavar could see that the numbers were hopeless. Earth's entire fleet numbered less than 200 ships. They would be outnumbered 50 to 1. "When?" Stevens asked. 6 months, maybe less. They are gathering ships from across the Empire. Dr. Cooper looked up from his notes. "General, you've given up everything to bring us this information. What do you want in return?" Kethavar thought about Morrison's daughters, who would grow up without their father. He thought about Carter's fiancée, who would never dance at his wedding. He thought about all the human families who would die when the invasion came. "I want to learn how to be human," he said simply. The humans looked confused, so he tried to explain. "Your people fight for love, not conquest. They die for strangers, not glory. They honor their enemies instead of mocking them. These are not Zephyrian concepts. I do not understand them, but I want to." Admiral Stevens leaned back in her chair. "You want to understand humanity?" "Yes. And perhaps, if I can understand what makes you worth dying for, I can convince some of my people that you are worth living for as well." Dr. Cooper put down his tablet and looked directly at Kethavar. "General, what you're asking for is not just information. You're asking us to trust you with our most precious values." 3 days after his arrival at Luna Station, General Kethavar was moved to a larger room with a table, chairs, and a window that showed Earth below. Admiral Stevens had told him that Earth's leaders were still deciding what to do with him, but they wanted to learn more about Zephyrian culture first. Dr. Helen Parker, Earth's top diplomat, entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and a tablet computer. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair, nothing like the fierce warriors Kethavar was used to dealing with. In Zephyrian culture, only the strongest led negotiations, but this human seemed confident despite her size. "Good morning, General," she said, sitting across from him. "I hope you slept well." Kethavar was surprised by her polite tone. "You are treating me better than I deserve, Dr. Parker." "Everyone deserves basic respect," she replied. "Even former enemies. That's one of the things that makes us human." She activated her tablet and showed him pictures from the Europa battle. I've been studying the fight where you first saw our people. Can you tell me what you were thinking when Captain Morrison crashed his ship? Cathvar looked at the image of Morrison's ship exploding against the Zephyrian dreadnought. I was confused. In our culture, a captain's duty is to survive and lead. Morrison's death seemed wasteful. And now? What do you think now? Now I think Morrison understood something I did not. He knew that his death would save many lives. He chose the greater good over his own survival. Dr. Parker made notes on her tablet. Tell me about Zephyrian families, General. Do you have children? The question surprised him. I have no family. Zephyrian military commanders are not allowed to mate or raise offspring. Family connections are considered a weakness that clouds judgment. But surely you had parents. I was raised in a military academy from age 3. All future commanders are. We learn to serve the Empire, not personal attachments. Dr. Parker looked sad. So you've never experienced love for family members? Kethavar thought about the question. I have felt loyalty to my unit and pride in my achievements, but love, as you describe it, is not part of our training. Then how can you understand why Morrison died for his crew? I cannot, Kethavar admitted. That is why I came here. I want to learn what love means. The next day, Dr. Parker brought someone new to meet him. Staff Sergeant Tony Rodriguez walked into the room on 2 artificial legs, his real ones lost, in the Europa battle. Kethavar tensed, expecting anger or hatred from the injured human. Instead, Rodriguez sat down and extended his hand. General Kethavar, I'm Tony Rodriguez. I was on the destroyer Courage when your forces attacked. Kethavar stared at the offered hand but did not take it. You were wounded because of my orders. Why do you not hate me? Rodriguez laughed, but not in a mean way. Oh, I was pretty angry at first. But Dr. Parker explained why you're here. Takes guts to give up everything and come to your enemies asking for peace. But I am responsible for your injuries. You were doing your job just like I was doing mine. War is ugly, but that doesn't mean the people fighting it are evil. Morrison, Carter, and Williams died fighting you, but they didn't hate you personally. They fought to protect people they loved. Kethavar finally shook Rodriguez's hand. How can you forgive so easily? Because staying angry won't bring my legs back or stop the next war. But maybe understanding each other will. Rodriguez told Kethavar about his life before the military. He had grown up poor in a place called Texas, raised by his grandmother after his parents died in an accident. He joined the military not for glory, but to send money home to support his grandmother and younger sister. I didn't fight at Europa for the thrill of battle, Rodriguez explained. I fought because I knew that if we lost, my family back home would be in danger. That's what motivates most human soldiers. We fight to protect the people we love. But you fought to protect strangers too, Kethavar pointed out. The evacuation ships contained people you had never met. Rodriguez nodded. True. But see, those strangers have families too. Kids, parents, people who love them. When you protect a stranger, you're really protecting someone's family member. We're all connected that way. This concept amazed Kethavar. In Zephyrian thinking, you only owed loyalty to your own unit and the Empire. But humans seemed to feel responsibility for people they had never met simply because those people were loved by others. That afternoon, Admiral Stevens brought new visitors. A man and woman in civilian clothes entered with a young girl about 10 years old. The woman had red eyes as if she had been crying recently. General Kethavar, Admiral Stevens said carefully, I want you to meet Claire Morrison and her daughter, Emma. Claire was married to Captain Jake Morrison. Kethavar's stomach dropped. This was the family Morrison had died to protect, the woman whose husband would never come home, the child who would grow up without a father. Claire Morrison looked directly at him. Her face showed pain but not anger. General, I wanted to meet the person who was there when my husband died. Mrs. Morrison, Kethavar said quietly. I am deeply sorry for your loss. Your husband was a brave warrior. Thank you, she said, sitting down with her daughter. Can you tell me how he died? The official reports don't say much. Kethavar looked at the little girl who was staring at him with curious eyes. How could he explain that her father had crashed his ship to save his crew? How could he tell a child that her daddy had chosen to die? Your husband saved many lives, he said carefully. When his ship was damaged, he made sure his crew escaped safely. He was thinking of others, even at the end. Emma spoke up in a small voice. Was my daddy scared? The question hit Kethvar like a physical blow. He thought about Morrison's last transmission, telling his crew to get to the escape pods. The captain's voice had been calm and determined, not frightened. No, Kethvar said honestly. Your father was not scared. He was brave, and he was thinking about you and your mother. Claire Morrison wiped her eyes. General, I don't hate you for what happened. Jake knew the risks when he joined the military. But I want you to understand something. What is that? My husband didn't die because he was a soldier. He died because he was a father and a husband. He fought to protect the kind of world where children can grow up safely, where families can be together. That's what humans fight for. After they left, Kethvar sat alone for a long time. He had met the family of a man he had helped kill, and instead of hatred, they had shown him understanding. Instead of seeking revenge, they had tried to teach him about love. Dr. Parker returned that evening with more recordings from the Europa battle. This time she showed him communications between the human ships during the fight. Listen to this, she said, playing a recording of Morrison talking to his crew as their ship was dying. Everyone to the escape pods, Morrison's voice said. That's an order. Tell my girls I love them. And this, Dr. Parker continued, playing Carter's last transmission. Ben, if you're listening to this later, I'm sorry I can't make it to our wedding. But I'm not sorry for what I'm doing. Those ships need protection and I can give it to them. And this one, she said, playing William's final message to his crew. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Take care of each other and remember why we're out here. We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for the right to love and be loved. Kethvar listened to each recording several times. These humans had not died for glory or conquest. They had died for love. Love for their families. Love for their fellow humans. Even love for strangers they would never meet. Dr. Parker, he said finally, I begin to understand why humans fight so fiercely. You are not fighting for territory or resources. You are fighting for the right to love each other. That's exactly right, General. And that's why we'll never surrender. No matter how many ships your people send, we're not just defending our lives, we're defending our ability to care for each other. Kethvar thought about his own people preparing for invasion. They saw humans as a resource to be harvested, a species to be conquered. They did not understand that they were trying to destroy something much more powerful than weapons or technology. They were trying to destroy love itself. Dr. Parker, he said, I need to ask you something important. What is it? When the invasion comes, will humans fight the same way they did at Europa? Will they sacrifice themselves to protect others? Yes, she said without hesitation. They will fight even harder because they'll be defending their homes and families directly. Then my people will lose, Kethvar said quietly. Dr. Parker looked surprised. What do you mean? You have 1,000 ships. Numbers mean nothing against people who fight for love, Kethvar replied. My people fight for conquest and glory, but humans fight for something worth dying for. That makes you stronger than any weapon. That night, as Kethvar looked out at Earth, he realized that his journey was just beginning. He had learned what made humans fight so fiercely. Now he had to find a way to teach his own people that some things were more valuable than conquest. The invasion fleet was coming, but maybe there was still time to prevent the war. Maybe love was strong enough to overcome even the Zephyrian Empire's hunger for conquest. For the first time in his life, General Kethvar understood what hope felt like. 2 months had passed since General Kethvar arrived at Luna Station. Admiral Stevens had given him permission to visit Earth itself, with Officer Danny Walsh as his guide and guard. Kethvar had learned much about humans from talking with them, but Stevens wanted him to see how they lived when they were not at war. The transport ship landed at a place called Denver, in the North American region. As Kethvar stepped off the ship, he saw his first human city. Buildings reached toward the sky, but between them were parks with trees and flowers. Children played on swings and slides while their parents watched. The air smelled of growing things, not the metal and recycled atmosphere of Zephyrian ships. "This is where people live when they're not fighting?" Kethavar asked Danny. "This is home," Danny replied. "This is what we're really defending." Their first stop was a hospital where Dr. Amy Foster worked. She was a small woman with tired eyes who spent her days treating sick children. Danny had told Kethavar that Dr. Foster often worked 18 hours without rest, refusing to leave until all her patients were cared for. As they walked through the children's ward, Kethavar saw something that amazed him. Dr. Foster was reading a story to a little boy who was very sick. The boy was not her child, not even related to her, but she treated him with the same care Kethavar imagined a mother would show. "Dr. Foster," Danny said, "this is General Kethavar. He's learning about human culture." Dr. Foster looked up from the storybook. She knew who Kethavar was and what he had done, but she did not show fear or anger. "Welcome to Earth, General. Would you like to meet some of our patients?" For the next hour, Kethavar watched Dr. Foster work. She treated each child as if they were the most important person in the universe. When a little girl cried because she missed her parents, Dr. Foster held her hand until she felt better. When a boy was scared about his surgery, she explained everything in words he could understand. "Why do you do this?" Kethavar asked her during a quiet moment. "Do what?" "Care for children who are not yours. Work without rest. Give so much of yourself for strangers." Dr. Foster smiled. "Because they need help and I can provide it. It's really that simple. But what do you gain from it?" "I gain the knowledge that I've made the world a little better, that these children might grow up healthy and happy, that their parents don't have to suffer watching their kids be sick. Isn't that worth any amount of work?" Kethavar thought about Zephyrian doctors who were trained to keep warriors healthy enough to fight. They did not waste time comforting patients or explaining procedures. They fixed what was broken and moved on to the next case. But Dr. Foster was healing more than just bodies. She was healing fear and sadness and loneliness. She was showing these children that they were valued and loved, even by strangers. The next day, Danny took him to a school where children learned about the world. The teacher, Mrs. Carol Johnson, was explaining history to a class of 10-year-olds. When she saw Kethavar, she asked if he would like to speak to the children about his home planet. Kethavar was nervous. These children were the same age as Emma Morrison, whose father had died because of his orders. But Mrs. Johnson encouraged him to try. "Children," she said, "this is General Kethavar. He comes from very far away, from a planet called Zephyr. Would you like to ask him questions?" A little girl raised her hand. "Are there kids on your planet?" "Yes," Kethavar said carefully. "But they live differently than you do." "How differently?" asked a boy. Kethavar tried to explain that Zephyrian children were taken from their parents at age 3 to begin military training, that they lived in barracks instead of homes, that they were taught to fight instead of learning art and music and stories. The children looked confused and sad. "Don't they miss their mommies and daddies?" the little girl asked. "They are taught not to miss them," Kethavar replied. "But that's terrible," said another child. "Everyone needs hugs and bedtime stories." Mrs. Johnson put her hand on the child's shoulder. "Different planets have different ways of living. That's why it's important to learn about each other." As they left the school, Kethavar felt heavy in his heart. The human children were learning about kindness and curiosity. They were encouraged to ask questions and think for themselves. Zephyrian children were taught only to obey orders and fight enemies. Which way was better? Looking at the happy faces of the human children, Kethavar thought he knew the answer. That evening, they attended a memorial service for the humans who had died at Europa. It was held in a large park, with families gathering to remember their loved ones. Claire Morrison was there with her daughters, along with hundreds of other people whose family members had died in the battle. But the service was not filled with hatred or calls for revenge. Instead, people shared stories about the ones they had lost. They talked about Morrison's love for his daughters, Carter's dream of becoming a teacher after her military service, William's hobby of building model ships, a man named Ben Parker, who had been engaged to Lisa Carter, stood up to speak. "Lisa didn't die because she hated our enemies," he said. "She died because she loved us. She loved all of us enough to give up our future together so that other people could have futures with their families." Then Ben did something that shocked Kethvar. He looked directly at him and continued speaking. "I know General Kethvar is here tonight. I know he was commanding the ships that killed Lisa, but I don't hate him. Lisa wouldn't want me to hate. She would want me to understand why the fighting started and help make sure it never happens again." After the service, Ben approached Kethvar. The young man's eyes were red from crying, but his voice was steady. "General, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do Zephyrians love the way humans do?" Kethvar thought about the question. "I do not think so. We feel loyalty and pride, but not what you call love." "Then I'm sorry for your people," Ben said. "Love is what makes life worth living. Without it, you're just existing." The next morning brought terrible news. Danny's communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Admiral Stevens. The Zephyrian invasion fleet had been spotted at the edge of the solar system. They would reach Earth in less than a week. "Kethvar," Danny said, "Admiral Stevens wants to see you immediately." They rushed back to Luna Station, where the command center was buzzing with activity. Human ships were being moved into defensive positions, but everyone knew the numbers were hopeless. 1,000 Zephyrian ships against 200 human vessels. Admiral Stevens met them at the door. "General, we're out of time. Is there anything you can do to stop this?" Kethvar thought about everything he had learned. He thought about Dr. Foster caring for sick children, about the students asking innocent questions, about Ben Parker forgiving the person who had killed his love. "Admiral, I want to send a message to the Zephyrian fleet. May I use your communication systems?" "What kind of message?" "A message about what I have learned here, about what love means and why humans fight. Maybe some of my people will listen." Stevens nodded. "Do it." Kethvar sat down at the communication console and began recording. He spoke in the Zephyrian language, but Danny translated his words for the humans listening. "My fellow Zephyrians," he began. "I am General Kethvar. You know me as a traitor who abandoned his duty. But I ask you to listen to what I have learned on Earth. Humans do not fight because they are weak or desperate. They fight because they love each other. I have seen a doctor work without rest to heal children who are not her own. I have seen a man forgive the enemy who killed his beloved. I have seen children learn kindness instead of hatred. We Zephyrians fight to take things from others. But humans fight to protect what they have built together. They have created something beautiful here, something worth preserving. If we destroy Earth, we will not just be killing enemies, we will be destroying love itself. We will be ending the hope that different species can understand each other instead of fighting. I know many of you will call me weak for saying these things. But I have learned that love is not weakness. Love is the strongest force in the universe. It makes people willing to die for strangers. It makes them work without reward to help others. It makes them forgive even their enemies. Do not attack these people. They have shown me that there is a better way to live than conquest and war. They have shown me what we could become if we learned to love instead of just fight." Kethvar ended the transmission and sat back. He did not know if anyone would listen, but he had tried. 3 days later, as the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, something unexpected happened. 50 ships broke away from the main force and requested permission to land peacefully. Their commanders had heard Kethvar's message and wanted to learn about this thing called love. The war was not prevented entirely. 900 Zephyrian ships still attacked, and many humans died defending their world. But 50 ships had chosen understanding over conquest. It was a beginning. Years later, General Kethvar would serve as Earth's ambassador to other alien species. He would tell them the story of humans who died for love, and of love strong enough to change even the hearts of enemies. He never returned to Zephyr, but he had found something better than home. He had found a purpose worth living for, and people worth protecting. He had learned that love was indeed the strongest force in the universe,